Planning Board meeting. The first thing on our agenda is to review last month's meeting minutes. As always, we paid some bills. We extended the SH29 West Neck lot line adjustment. They're stuck at the county recording office. We passed the Elliott Baldwin lot line adjustment. We're now waiting on them for county filings, deed filings. And we passed the Beagleman Holding LLC wetlands application. We had two public hearings, one for English Virtue at 6G Hager Road. It was a continuation from the previous month. And that was closed, and then we opened and immediately adjourned the Dunn Wetlands application pending CAC comments. Oh, I'm sorry, we had a third public hearing for the R&B Shelter Island Radigan lot line modification, which we also closed. So everything looked in order to me. What about you guys? Any comments?
Good.
Questions?
Accurate.
So I make a motion to accept the May 14th planning board meetings. Second. All in favor? We have a couple bills in front of us. Let's read some list. We have an invoice from the Shelter Island Reporter Times Media Group for the public notice for the Reach Wetlands application. $54.37. This is a necessity. So I make a motion to accept the reporter invoice for $54.37. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have two invoices from the Raymond Group. Again, they separate them into wetlands permits and subdivision site plans. The wetlands permits, we're working on Reach and Stitch. Oh, that was regarding the email to the town board and the general wetland, Shelter Island Planning Board wetlands application. Total of 7 hours and $1,155. Always valuable, so I make a motion. Oh, and then the second invoice, sorry.
Yeah.
For subdivision was all mostly for West Neck Creek Cottages and the Nelson White subdivision. Total 3.75 hours. We finished up our work on the Nelson White subdivision. Thank you, Joe. That was long in the making. That total $638.75 for a total of $1,793.75. So I'd like to make a motion to accept the Rayners Group invoices in May for $1,793.75. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
We have two resolutions to review tonight. The first is for the English Virtue Wetlands application. This would be number 19 of 2024. They are at 6G Hager Road. They're planning to reconstruct a guardrail to the dock in the vegetative buffer, demolish a spa in the vegetative buffer, construct a new pad for a hot tub and equipment in the adjacent regulated area, construct new steps and landings totaling 36 square feet on the north side of the residence, which will be in the vegetative buffer, and to construct 64 square foot deck on the north side of the residence in the vegetative buffer. Also, reconstruct and expand landward a concrete apron located on the south side of the existing garage in the vegetative buffer, a roof overhang of 2 feet, and a new concrete pad for hot tub equipment on the west side of the property. We looked through it, and we thought it was fairly small. And the findings, we felt that the applicant met the criteria set forth in 129.5 of the town code. Specifically felt that the project did not negatively impact the value, function, size of the wetlands, because they're really seeking minor improvements and eliminating previously constructed deck that was constructed without the benefit of permits. Project will not have a negative impact on the quality or quantity of groundwater because the applicants are not increasing habitable space, but rather updating existing structures. The applicants have just demonstrated the proposed project will not create a net increase in the risk of runoff because the applicant is not proposing to increase the total building coverage or and the lot coverage is only increasing slightly by 52 square feet. And the applicant is proposing to make slight changes to an already improved lot. The proposed project is the best alternative because of the existing location of the residence. So it's going to be approved based on the site plans prepared by Maxine Lau, last revised 4/15/24, the approved landscape plan, and the additional conditions are the property to be revegetated in accordance with the site plan. The permit is only valid for 2 years, and upon completion, the town's environmental consultant shall review the plantings to make sure they're confirmed with the application. Any questions from anyone here?
I'm just thinking the resolution that on where it says disposition of the applications, you go to 1G, it says the construction of a roof overhang seaward. Did you just put 2 in front of roof, 2 foot?
2 foot?
Yeah. So it's
As in TWO,
2. 2 foot.
instead of
2 foot.
the 2 apostrophes?
There's no, this is nothing in
We're looking at a different copy?
there. Yeah, no, we're looking at the back.
It's on the
It's on the beginning, but it's not
Yeah.
at the end.
release stuff, but it wasn't.
Okay.
Didn't make it
Yeah.
to this.
Okay.
Just to be clear, yes.
Absolutely. So you're in G,
It's
H1.
H1G.
H1G. Good catch, Marcus.
so I make a motion to accept resolution number 19 of 2024, corrected for H1G, saying 2 foot. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next resolution we have is number 20 of 24. This is for the lot line adjustment for Rick Radigan. And again, this was fairly straightforward at 8 Hillside Drive and 5 Community Drive. Radigan's own both properties. They built a shed on the vacant property, and this was just to do a lot line adjustment to correct that mistake. I think this is fairly straightforward, simple. I'm not even going to go into it in detail. Does anyone have any questions?
It's clear.
So I make a motion to accept resolution number 20 of 2024 for the Radigan lot line adjustment.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have 2 public hearings. The first is for the Dunn Wetlands application at 18 and 20 Tuttle Drive. This is a continuation from last month. There was some correspondence for this. We received email from the Tuttle Drive Association at 5:47 today. And it's signed the Tuttle Drive neighbors, Angela von Reinbeck and Derek Van Zant. Received an email from Derek Van Zant at 6:03 this afternoon, saying that he supports the first email. And we received the third, where's that? Here it is. At 5:58 this afternoon from Angela von Reinbeck, again stating that she fully supports the letter that was submitted. I can say the letter deals primarily with contesting the lot line merger that was done. Not sure how that's affected us, but we will hear more. I know back on May 9th, I was copied on correspondence from Judith Womansky stating that the property had been properly merged. So we'll hear more from that. Would the applicant like to say something? Oh, sorry, one more thing. We did receive the Conservation Advisory Council's comments. 6 comments. First is submit certified delineated wetlands code 129-4A, delineated wetlands boundary flagged by a credentialed environmentalist within 5 years of submission of the application. Number 2, submit vegetation plan. Number 3, submit full-scale survey plan and C11 in order that they can be legibly and scalable without a magnifying glass. Number 4, wetlands permit application page B5, soil types should include loam and clay, and paragraph D.2 is not an explanation. Number 5, 133.12F, 3, no building of structures within 100 feet from landward edge of tidal wetlands. That deals with zoning, the zoning code. That doesn't apply to wetlands applications. Vote for denial, resubmit plans, and vote 5-0 deny. All yours, Matt.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Matt Sherman, Sherman Engineering Consultant. I'm here with the property owner, Charles Dunn, his architect, Ray Renault. And also Karen Hogue is here for questions regarding the lot merger. I have received the CAC's comments and had prepared a couple of things in response to those. Fortunately, I did not notice on our initial site plan that we didn't have a environmental consultant look at the wetlands boundary. So I got Sean Barron, the town's environmental consultant, to go out there and verify it. And the wetlands boundary is the bulkhead, the seaward to the bulkhead. So I've got a revised copy of the site plan for everybody showing that. It is going to change our square foot numbers, and it's going to change our setbacks because we were using mean high water previously. But I'll go through all that here in just a second. Also have for you a detailed landscape plan with the landscaping, the different plants that are being proposed, where and how much.
Has this been sent yet, Matt, or are they?
Yeah, so they've been emailed to the town, emailed them yesterday. If I could share my screen. Okay, thank you. Okay, just to go over this very quickly, this is a PDF of the plan that I just gave the board. And I'll go into this stuff in more detail in just a second. But what we did was we revised all the numbers so that everything is coming off of the face of the bulkhead. For the middle third of the property, it doesn't really make much of a difference. But as you go to the east and the west, that the mean high water line does move out from the bulkhead a little bit. So it does make a little bit of a difference there. This is the site as it exists today. Tuttle Drive, we'll call Tuttle Drive to the north. Cockles Harbor is to the south. And then you've got properties east and west. There is, along Tuttle Drive, you're at about a 16-foot elevation, give or take, up here by the road. You've got the flood zone, goes from an X to a VE, which is this curved line that goes down through the water side of the property, just to the water side of the existing house. There is an existing two-story dwelling with a deck on the water side, and there's also an existing two-story detached garage just between the house and the road. There is a concrete pad that's down just off of the bulkhead. The septic system is just under 100 feet to the leaching pools from the bulkhead, shallow groundwater system, and then the supply well is over here next to the garage. Excuse me, it's a A zone, so we've got a 40-foot front yard setback running along the front of the property. For the principal dwelling, it's a 25-foot setback. For swimming pools, things along those lines, we've got a 20-foot setback on either side. From our wetlands, these are our 75-foot and 100-foot wetland setback lines. As the property currently exists, and I won't go through all these numbers right now, but we are basically, the house is as close as 63 feet to the bulkhead, so 63 feet from the wetlands. The deck is just under 62 feet from the wetlands. And then we've got walkways, patios, this other concrete pad over here, all of that stuff within the vegetative buffer, and then also within the main part of the house within the adjacent regulated area. So this is what we're proposing. The dwelling comes almost entirely out of the regulated area. We've got 276 square feet within the regulated area. That's within that adjacent, that's 25 feet. The patio, swimming pool and patio, those are predominantly wethin the adjacent regulated area. And then about half of it is outside of the wetlands regulated area. Moving the wetlands boundary to the seaward face of the bulkhead brings us to 67 feet 3 inches to the seawardmost corner of the patio. So it's 64 square feet. So with our initial application that we submitted to the board, we were trying to keep everything outside of the regulated and outside of the vegetative buffer by using the bulkhead as the boundary for the wetlands limit. What we're going to ask is that the board consider that 64 square feet as new construction that would qualify for the 100 square foot exemption. Everything else that's going on the site has been there since long before the 2001 enacting of the wetlands code. So everything predates that, so everything would be pre-existing. It's just a little bit of a cleaned up version, makes it a little bit easier to see. We got rid of that septic system that's just under 100 feet from the wetland or from the bulkhead, putting a new IA septic system. It's going, right now, we're looking at it up here in this corner. We may end up moving it around a little bit, but keeping it in this corner up here, well out of the way from the wetlands boundary. The well also comes up all the way out to the road so that we can get as much fresh water in that well as possible. We're going to be putting stormwater control. So we've designed for a 2-inch storm. We've got stormwater dry wells along the road side of the house, along the north side. Those would be for the swimming pool. And then also along the east side, we've got stormwater dry wells. Unfortunately, I can't get them outside of the 100-foot setback because we have to keep them at least 50 feet from the supply well in order to meet county sanitary code. This is just, excuse me, just a section of the building showing its relationship to groundwater. Groundwater in this area is at about 1.5 foot.
Sorry.
The bottom of the footings are going to be just over 2 feet from groundwater at 3.7 feet. The top of the house and the ridge of the house is going to be just about 34 feet above existing average grade. So all of that complies with the zoning code. This is the vegetation plan that I've also handed the board this evening. This was done by Hollander Design, so one of the leading local landscape design companies. They've given a list of all of the different plantings that are going to be going. They've got a couple of different zones that they've looked at that we're going to go through in a little bit more detail here.
I'm throwing you a monkey wrench.
No, absolutely.
The swimming pool design in Hollander's page is a little different than what's on the site plan.
I'll have to look at that.
All right, just finish you up. I'll keep my comments later.
That's good. Yeah, they've got the My Site plan, there's a hot tub in that, what would be that southeast corner that's not on Hollander's plan.
Yeah,
I can speak to that.
If you'd like to come in and introduce yourself.
The current plan.
Ray, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Sorry, Ray Reynolds, architect for the client, Charles Dunn. We've been working with Hollander on the landscape plan. This planting plan has not been updated to reflect the new pool that you're seeing in this, and everything else, the pool location that matches in the site plan and the surveys is correct. This planting plan does need to have the pool updated. This was an earlier version that they had done.
Okay, I just noticed it didn't extend
Yeah.
as further close to the water as the one on the site plan, so,
So we'll have that updated.
Okay.
So there's no hot tub in the new one?
Believe that there is, it's integrated into the pool. Yeah, it's part
Right
of,
here.
it's part of the actual.
they're proposing it here, and see how this bumps forward?
Yeah.
That should bump, but here it doesn't, so.
Yeah, probably trying to get rid of the hot tub.
You can see on our first floor plan, later in Matt's presentation, that's incorporated into the actual pool, right down here in the corner. Okay?
Thank you. You can keep them well and let the cover cross.
Okay, so we'll get the board to revise vegetation plan that reflects the current site plan, which is with the rest of the application. So this is basically a stylized rendering of the overall plan. You've got a road portion, which is going to have flowering trees. You're going to have pines, dogwoods, things along those lines. And again, it's all listed on that plan. And then also shrubs. They're designed in a way so that they're flowering at different times throughout the year. So basically from early mid-spring to mid-late fall, different things are going to be flowering at different times. And then that middle section of the property, basically around the building on the seaward side and by the swimming pool, along the same thing, a mix of trees, shrubs, things along those lines. Everything is native to the area, all stuff that, Hollander obviously knows what they're doing out on these things. So it's all things that are appropriate for the site. The floor plans, for the house, you've got a unfinished basement that's in the lower left-hand corner here. There's also areas with slab on grade, both for the garage and for some of the patios. On our first floor, we've got kitchen, dining room, living room, family room, 1 bedroom, and then we've got 4 bedrooms on the second floor of the main house. On the second floor of the garage, we've got another room which is going to be used as a home office. For my sanitary design, I counted it as a bedroom so that under any circumstance, we've got the right number of right size sanitary system for however anybody wants to call that room above the garage. Right now, there's no plumbing or anything like that to it, so it's kind of like, we wanted to make sure that nobody could come back and say that that was not being attended. It's a little bit better of a drawing, shows a little bit more, and it shows to what Ray was saying earlier about the swimming pool and the patio around the swimming pool. So that's the accurate layout. And a couple of elevations, top one from the road, the bottom one is from the water. And then elevations from the sides. And some artistic, architectural renderings of the building, just to kind of give a feel for what it would look like on site. You can see on the, this drawing down here on that second one down on the far right-hand side, the way that the property slopes away, that's a pretty accurate representation of the way the grading is going to be. So that pool deck, right now, it would be at about a 14-foot elevation at the top of the pool deck. The pool itself has about a 10-foot total distance from the top of the coping, from that 14-foot elevation to the bottom of the structure of the pool. Groundwater at 1.5 feet, that gives us about 2.5 feet from groundwater to the bottom of the pool. So we comply with the town code and requirements as far as the pool construction is concerned. And this is the basic design of the pool, the basic layout. So that's pretty much what I've got right now. If the board has any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Also, if you have any questions for any more for Ray or for the owner or anybody else, we'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Depth of the basement,
Currently 9 feet.
9 feet.
feet, and you're still 2 feet above groundwater with the footings.
We're actually thinking of raising that a little bit.
So, just going back, I know you want to use the 100 square foot exemption for the patio bump out, but I mean, is there really a need for that patio bump out? I don't see what the function of that would be. It almost seems like Hollander's swimming pool is less invasive into the, yes, I recognize the existing house extends into the vegetative buffer, but you are building a brand new house, brand new everything. And so
Yeah, I think
you're not reusing the section of the existing foundation, you're just building it all new and wanting to match some of the encroachments.
we've had some internal discussions about that bump out, and, you know, if the board was willing to, move the application forward, it's something that we may be willing to lose. Initially, when Hollander was designing that area, the original pool, you'll note, is a negative edge pool.
Mhm.
One of the things that we didn't like about that was, environmentally, you're using a lot of energy to kind of, you know, get that pool up to temperature, because it thins out the water at the overflow. So we opt for a pool that does not have a negative edge, kind of a waterfall edge.
To put a auto cover on
Yes,
a
also.
negative edge too.
Yeah, for the cover. So we went to a pool that's more conventional, where has coping around all four sides. And that area specifically was meant for some furniture to kind of have this kind of this kind of feeling that you're on the bow of the ship. But we've had some internal discussions, and the clients would be willing to cut it straight across from the edge of the pool.
That would take it.
Probably eliminate that 64 square feet or make it very minimal.
Guys have any questions?
I like the new wetlands line from the bulkhead.
Yeah.
It makes more sense
More
that way.
delineation, yeah.
And that, just to reiterate too, and it was a good catch on the CAC's part that I was misjudging where that wetlands line was. So having Sean come out there and verify it at the face of the bulkhead, that is really where that problem kind of spurred from. So.
The other thing that you'll notice about the design of the house and location, we pulled the house as far forward as possible. There is a driveway and there's some parking, but we've really made some sacrifices to try to get this house as far forward out of the wetlands as possible, to be conforming.
So the facade's about 45 feet out
Yeah,
from the property line.
yeah, that front step is pretty much right at the 40-foot line. And, we pulled it pretty much as far forward as we can. There's a roof overhang over that front entry, so we wanted to make sure that we were complying with the front yard setback.
The garage has a flat roof with a deck on top.
Yes, and that conforms to the 25-foot. It's the flat roof structure. We also have taken careful consideration of the location of the pool and pushed the pool into the most conforming location based on that wetland offset setback. It would be nicer to have the pool maybe, further towards the living room or further towards the easterly side of the property. But we recognize that that would, be more non-conforming. So we work with our client, with Ed Hollander's office,
What do you mean non-compliant?
by pushing the pool
Closer
further
to the
towards
house?
east. Actually, towards the east, you would be further into that, 75-foot setback.
What do you have between the pool water edge and the, I guess these planters or?
Yeah,
Yep.
those are actually steps, there are planters, and there's a change in elevation.
Oh.
So,
What's that distance, like 25 feet?
no, I think it's more like, 14 feet or 12 feet. Just for some lounge chairs right there.
So from this retaining wall to the edge of water is 14 feet?
From the retaining wall, we'd have to get you an actual dimension. Can you point out where you,
From the edge of water to the retaining wall, that's 14 feet. Lounges are what, 6?
yeah, so maybe it's
6,
a little more.
12, 18, maybe
Oh, to here.
to here. That's a raised planter, right?
This is a planting bed, yes. And that planting bed allows for these steps to kind of die.
And then you have more planting beds here
Yes,
to soften the wall.
we do.
Do you have any irrigation tanks? Because there's going to be a lot of plantings here. What are you doing? How are you going to support all these plantings?
If we're gonna have irrigation, we have cisterns put in place, right? Yeah.
We don't have a plan for the irrigation at this point to allow for things to get established. We would work with Hollander's office on doing that. On other projects, we've used, portable bladder tanks. We've also, depending on the project, used 1,000-gallon, 1,500-gallon septic tank, for lack of a better term, for topping off the swimming pool, things along those lines. Really that kind of mitigation that the board would like to see would be more than a year or two to add any of those kinds of components into the project.
I'm just thinking this is a very dense, tight neighborhood with lots of irrigation systems, lots of wells right next to each other. I don't have a history of the water lens or whether there have been salt intrusion problems, but I know nearby there have been.
This is a sensitive spot, absolutely.
So we're probably going to do what we've asked on many projects before, ask for a 5-gallon minute well. And then there's a lot of plantings. I mean, Ed Hollander's reputation precedes him, and these are going to take multiple years to mature. So I think you would have to count on trucked in water for this irrigation.
Can I ask, what is the total square footage of all this?
Of the entire patio,
Yeah, I'm just curious,
6,000,
just a
6,000.
I think it's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a number on the actual patios themselves.
It's in the application. So second patio,
The proposed is just over 6,000.
6,065, and the house is 5,998.
Yes. Reduce the house to be conforming.
By a foot.
Like 2 feet.
No, it's a foot.
That's in that.
You make the rule if that's the way it works.
I mean, this is just such a large new proposal on a very small lot. I mean, has the owner ever considered just, you know, I mean, some of the things that we're talking about, like the waterings, the encroachment in the regulated area, any chance of going smaller? Pulling it back a little bit?
There's 7 bathrooms.
Well, it's
Seven
not,
bathrooms, I know.
it's not, and I get into this all the times, and I'll make a statement, it's not the number of bathrooms.
Yep.
Whether you have 2 people in a house, they'll use the same amount of water and create the same amount of waste in 20 bathrooms as they do in 1. It's really the bedrooms that define occupancy.
But I mean,
Just stood out
just
to me.
in terms of the acreage and what you're building in comparison to what was there before. The only thing that comes to mind is that, you know, the town board right now is working on a new proportionality thing, so this is one of the, you know, this is just one of the concerns, and although that hasn't been decided yet, it's, you know, it's something that people are thinking about.
I mean, the previous house, this is more than 3 times the size of the previous
Right,
house.
right.
But it is on a bigger property because it does merge the neighboring, the 2 properties together.
What's the percentage coverage, which is what the actual code is?
Do you have a percent of coverage, building coverage calculation on this?
But that's in theory the rule.
Site coverage, just in square footage.
Something we want to definitely check. Understand.
It's 6,065 feet.
Well, maybe you can come back to that. We don't need that right this
I'm
second.
looking at about 4,500 square feet, give or take. Then we've got to add the
Yeah.
garage into it, 720. So, let's say, yeah, 5,500 an acre, so. We're somewhere in the 12-13% ballpark.
Okay.
For the 2 buildings, and
That's not outlandish.
Not at all.
That's not out.
Seems much worse. That's well within code.
that's not a gospel number, that's a
I just, yes,
supply number.
we'll hold it to you. You have to do it.
You guys have any other questions? Does
Well, I'm just, can I ask one? other
Yeah, yeah,
thing? So I'm just thinking back to previous applications we have had where this has come up about, you know, possible alternatives. I mean, so why have you here? I'm gonna ask you, and, you know, this came up before where I think I may have neglected publicly to ask you about feasible alternatives, but as we just stated, like 3 times the size of what we have now on a small lot in a neighborhood where other houses are not this large. And current dispatchers review are considering heights and expansion, so.
No, I understand,
It's
and,
kind of the elephant in the room that nobody wants to say, but it is there.
yeah, no, I understand, and I do appreciate the question, and it is a large building, it is it's basically a 1 acre piece of property. It complies with the current codes and regulations as far as the building size, the height, setbacks, from front yard, side yard, things along those lines. Complies with lot coverage, so it complies with all of that. That doesn't necessarily mean that the board or the current direction of the town is, wants to necessarily see something of this size or something similar to it or something a quarter the size. That's all in the process right now. What's occurred is, we've looked at the site, we've looked at the code, and we've designed a building that complies. We have looked at alternatives. The property owner, they want to have the amenities that this house has, continuing the existing 5-bedroom use to a proposed 5-bedroom use, having it spread out. Whether you've got a bedroom that is, 20 by 20 or 12 by 12, it's still a bedroom. So a larger house does have more visual impact on the site. From a wetland standpoint, a larger house is going to have more stormwater collection that's going to be required for it. It's going to have more impact in that way. And that's impact that we can, from an engineering standpoint and a site planning standpoint, we can manage and we can mitigate. So we had looked at some different designs. We had looked at moving the pool landward, getting it less in the regulated area. Doing so created a problem because of the difference in elevation. We would have to pick the pool up higher to get it on the level of that terrace, that first terrace that's at the level of the house. So we were trading one set of problems for another. So everything we were looking to do, it wasn't really getting us any further to basically having no encroachment whatsoever, which would obviously be the goal for any of these projects. If this property was 25 feet deeper, we wouldn't be here tonight.
Yeah.
We would have had our building permit and we'd be digging in the ground right now. Unfortunately, it's not. And that's kind of what leads us to where this design is now.
One of the design considerations from the beginning of this project, this is a house that is not, 2 rooms deep. It is a house that's 1 room deep with circulation on the front side. And that's really to minimize the depth of the house because we knew we were dealing with a wetlands line or configuration. So all of that has been thought about and designing the house with a circulation zone on the front and rooms on the back side. So it's pretty narrow, as houses go. It's not 50 feet wide, it's, 30 feet wide, 30 feet deep.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have anything to say?
Or we give up if I could. I'd like to have Karen Hogue come in and explain the lot merger, just because I know that that's a point of concern for some people.
Hi,
Hi,
good
Karen.
evening, board members, how are you?
Please introduce yourself.
Sure, Karen Hogue from Cheney Lake Gum. And although I haven't seen any of the correspondence that was filed just before the meeting, I just wanted to touch on the merger question, since that seems to be a concern. I don't know exactly what the arguments are, but I just wanted to kind of give you a summary. So the applicant, Charles Dunn, acquired the 2 lots in September 14th of 2021, and since that time, and currently holds title in the same name. That was for lot 16 and lot 17. The applicant applied to the town of Shelter Island's tax assessor to merge the 2 parcels to create one conforming lot of 42,018 square feet. On April 18th, 2024, the Suffolk County Real Property Division assigned a new tax lot number, which is lot 17.1, to the lots which were previously lots 16 and 17. I don't know if the board has a copy of those, but I can have an extra copy if I give those to you.
I don't have a copy, but we do have a letter from the assessor that the 2 properties were merged.
Okay, well, I can give this to the clerk.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
These were the necessary and proper legal steps to be taken in order to merge the lots. The town zoning code views a merger as having occurred, and it's in the code as a definition as the combining of a conforming or non-conforming lot with an adjacent conforming or non-conforming lot held in common ownership at any time since October 19th, 1959, which has been the case here. So case law also supports the merger in situations like this. Again, our position is that this is a non-issue. We have combined two non-conforming lots in this Lot A zone in order to make one conforming lot, which is 42,000 plus square feet. I have nothing further at this time, but if there are any questions regarding the merger issue, I'd be happy to submit some.
I appreciate you saying it. It really doesn't affect the planning board and wetlands review.
No,
This is assessor's office kind of item.
yes,
As far as I know, I've merged lots on behalf of clients in the past. It's a very simple process on Shelter Island.
yeah,
You don't have to go through all this rigmarole, so I get it.
correct. Okay, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience like to speak?
Hi, I'm Bob Cohn. I'm here as a board member of the Tuthill Drive Neighbors, Inc., which owns Tuthill Drive. We're the real property owners. And the association is financed by people who own property adjacent to Tuthill Drive. The property of 18 and 20 Tuthill are adjacent to Tuthill Drive, and we did get a wetlands notice. And the other two people who signed that letter, the Van Reinbecks, live next door, and Derek Van Zandt and his wife live on the other side of this. They also got wetlands notice. So I respect very much Matt Sherman. He's a brilliant engineer. He's done work for me. I know he's been in front of lots of town boards and presenting, and he's become very good at defending even the indefensible. So I can't compete with that. I just, a music lawyer. I don't have a license to practice law in New York. And I'm here as a board member of the Tuthill Drive Association. And what the Tuthill Drive Association is the elephant in the room. So some things have been said that are inaccurate, and I want to just correct the record here.
So are your comments in relation to the
Yes.
wetlands application?
Yes,
It's nothing to do with the merger. This isn't with the wetlands.
the wetlands application and the permit depends upon the merger.
We've been told it's legally been,
And that's,
we have a copy of this. I really don't want to go down this rabbit hole.
Ian, let
Bob,
me talk.
don't talk to me that way. Bob,
But don't
I'm
interrupt.
saying this.
You're wrong. It has not been merged. I'm here to explain why.
We got your long letter. Let us process it. Please don't repeat yourself that you're repeating the letter, okay?
I didn't have to send you the letter.
But you did, just 45 minutes ago, before this
Yeah.
meeting started.
Okay, so I'm gonna finish what I have to say. And what I said in the letter was that if the merger does not occur, they can't build these plans. These plans become irrelevant.
But the merger has occurred.
No, it hasn't. Let me explain why.
Can you please show me proof that it
Yes.
hasn't?
Yes, if you let me speak. Okay?
Proof, hard proof,
Hard proof, right now.
okay?
Okay? If you let me speak, I'll tell you. So, as background, I don't care to be interrupted like this, but these 25-foot or 50-foot strips of land in the neighborhood of Tuthill Drive were intended to be owned by the people across the street.
That's an argument.
As access. It's not an argument. You just let me finish what I have to say.
Okay.
It's a public hearing. You're listening, I talk. Do you get that?
I'll give you 3 minutes.
No. You're gonna let me finish.
No, seriously.
No, seriously. You just spent a half hour.
You just gave us a long document. We haven't had the chance to digest it. And
Okay.
now you're gonna repeat it to us?
No, I'm not
Idiots?
repeating it to you. Just please listen to me. I'm not going away. Now listen to me. You are operating under the assumption that the town has a statutory merger provision. It does not. The statutory merger provision used to say, this is the 133-22 of the code. That's the prior code. A non-conforming lot shall merge with an adjacent conforming or non-conforming lot, which has been held in common ownership at any time since October 19, 1959. That was the law. If that was the law today, these lots will have been merged the day the Dunn owners owned both lots. In 2018, the town board repealed that provision. in a matter of Allen versus I don't know who spoke earlier, whether it's an attorney or not, but she has the law.
She introduced herself as an attorney.
Okay, well, she has the law wrong. She's basing her knowledge on the town codes of other East End towns that have a statutory merger provision. We don't, okay? In 2018, this town board said, this board, in light of present planning and zoning codes, does not believe this section, that's a statutory merger provision, as written, contributes significantly to furthering town goals. Okay? So they repealed it for good reason. They didn't know all the reasons, but they repealed it. Which means, under the highest court in matter of Allen
Bob,
v.
excuse me a
Atchison.
second.
No.
And Ben, have the town board discussed this? Because the letter was addressed to you guys on the 13th of
What I
March.
suggest you do,
No, we've not discussed.
So this isn't really for us to take up. This is for the town board or the assessor to take up,
yeah, but
correct? Okay,
okay,
thank you.
wait. Okay, then wait. Yes, and that's why originally this was sent to the town board and to the planning board. And I've been told, you can talk to the town attorney, that I'm right. There's no statutory merger provision in here. What happened was, the town board didn't add something to the code that said what they wanted to do in terms of procedure for lot mergers. How that you need to have permission to merge lots.
Is this when they took away the merger by the operational law?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So now there's a void. So what the town board could do is delegate the planning board or the ZBA, or to keep it on themselves, to have a permit for lot mergers. There's a case of Matter v. Allen v. Adamy. It says a merger is not, this is the highest court of New York, forgot the date of the case. A merger is not effected merely because adjoining parcels come into common ownership. The contrary view would undermine the many cases which we have held that there to be no merger in the absence of a specific merger provision. Otherwise, the court observed, there would be, quote, no need for statutory merger provision. So in other words, when you would take away the statutory merger provision, you need permission to merge the lots. Now, the second part of this is very important. Just because the county's tax assessor reassigned lot numbers it does not affect merger for zoning purposes. If you look at even the website of the tax map division, it says that the assemblage or merger and apportionment of lots and assignment of new tax map numbers is performed by this division. It is the town or village building and planning departments where you best be advised to check parcel zoning and variance requirements if you plan on splitting a lot, assembling a lot, or erecting any structures or creating any other uses on parcels. I have talked to one of the top land use attorneys in Suffolk County who has confirmed for me that just because the tax assessor reassigns some numbers to make it easier for them and easier for the taxpayer doesn't affect the zoning and for a lot merger. Very few people know that the town of Shelter Island repealed our statutory merger provision, particularly the attorney who spoke earlier. So I was looking on the internet, I'm not a land use lawyer, but I attached to my letter, this is out of state, but Oregon, that says the same thing. This is a lawyer writing that says that tax lots is not the same as lots for purposes of zoning.
Okay, so we have your write-up.
Okay.
We will take it under consideration. Are you done?
Now let's get to the next thing. So the premise of these plans, I'd like you to take a look, turn to page 3 of my letter. It's not going to take long, okay? Because I wanted to say it, what I want to say. Page 3 shows you their map of the existing site with the 2 lots. I don't know whether you have the letter in front of you or not.
No, did you bring copies for us?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Okay.
So this is the one.
This
that
is
was
the letter we
mailed.
got it
Okay.
just an hour ago.
It's online, I'm sorry about that.
And you're just, you haven't even given us a chance to process it, and up here you're
Fair
teaching
enough.
us about it again?
Well, you were so
We're-
adamant about
We're
the
not
law.
dumb.
No, I'm not saying it. You were so adamant that you were right about the law that I felt I couldn't leave this room without correcting. Okay? So The premise of this.
Again, this
Is that
has,
the lots are merged. Let me finish my sentence.
Jesus Christ.
If the town board declines to merge these two lots, they have to go back to the drawing board.
Right. So let's let that happen.
Okay, now, fair enough. Let's let that happen. Now, what was
You did that horse.
noted by the Conservation Advisory Council, the mean high tide line is not the wetlands flag.
We just corrected
Just
that. We
corrected
just
that.
corrected
Well,
that.
they corrected it after they were told to correct it.
They were advised and they caught their mistake and they've corrected it. It's been done.
Okay, so what's happening here, in summation, okay, is a situation where they've pushed the limits on this property. You got it, going from 1,800 square foot house to nearly 6,000 square foot house with a 6,000 square foot deck, which I believe is a brick deck, if I read their plan correctly. A brick deck with a 1,000 square foot pool. And if you take a look at the map that they're showing, look at the Van Rynbeck's house. They're not 20 feet away from the property line. They're less than 10 feet away because the house was built in 1930, whatever. The outdoor kitchen, and this has nothing to do with what you have to decide on, I agree. But a lot of thought needs to be done in connection with this house is the poster child for why the town board is doing what it's doing on proportionality. What I included with my email this afternoon was the latest proposal dated today, okay, that the town board is considering. And if you take a look at what they're considering, if you don't merge the lots, the bigger lot is 0.8 acres. The maximum square footage that they're considering now is 4,100 square foot house. We're not saying he should.
But Al was considering 3,000 square feet. It's 3,000, not 4,100.
So does it matter?
It's not our current law.
I know. I'm giving you the
We're not
tenor.
living in the future yet.
You're right. I'm giving you the tenor of the town.
But that doesn't affect the law today.
Okay.
We have to apply today's laws.
Fair enough. Now, if they merge the lots, the maximum house size is 4,600 under the current proposal. You'd have to have at least 2 acres to build a 6,000 square foot house.
I don't think they're gonna.
My neighbors-
I was saying,
When my neighbors learned about this house,
but again, that's the future. I mean,
I agree, fair enough.
can we move on, Paul?
Flogging a
Can we
dead
move on?
horse.
Yeah, I'm about to just finish. So I have said what I wanted to say. I could not leave this room without correcting the incorrect law that's been presented to you. And I would suggest to you that in consideration, I think what Julia had said earlier, you're going to have a piece of property that's going to be developed to its absolute limit, okay? And I think you should be very careful about where that tidal wetland line begins, that is the wall,
We addressed that.
okay? And not go 100 feet, go 75 feet, and have them redo their site plan and have another survey done as to where that line is. Because there isn't a retaining wall all the way across. Okay?
Thank you, Bob.
Can I just ask a question? I didn't quite.
Any questions?
Well, I realize just because you said a lot, I don't want to miss anything. You said, okay, so you said that the letter that you sent to us, you also sent to the town board, they have not had a chance to review
The
it.
town board received.
They got it on May 13th or
They
something.
have not.
And you haven't had time to look at it. And then I want to make sure I heard you correctly, because you mentioned a bunch of people. You said that you spoke to Stephen Kiley about this, or?
I would suggest that you speak with him. That's what
I'm
I.
suggest we speak. He hasn't spoken to
Wait,
Stephen.
Or
that's-
get advice
You-
from town council as to
You
whether.
didn't say that. Okay.
We're the responsible.
I suggest you get advice from town council as to whether the statutory merger provision has indeed been repealed and what the effect of that is on the merger, which in my position I am taking is that it requires town board approval.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Get that letter.
Anyone else in the audience have something to say? Does anyone on Zoom have something to say? So what do you guys want to do? Do you want to close this for the future submissions?
Petitions and
So we're,
board review, I guess.
I think
we are asking for,
There's
okay,
some,
hang on.
there's someone.
Pam?
Yes, good evening, Chairman. I'm
Yeah.
curious about the revisions that were made too, and it's really hard to look at these plans with the revisions that were made. And I think it would be prudent to keep the hearing open just until everyone can see those revisions. I mean, the question about the vegetative plan showing the pool in a different location, it's very hard to keep track of what's really happening on this site and what the plans truly are at this point. And I will say that I disagree with any intrusion into the vegetative buffer with the demolition that's occurring. This is a brand new site. You can just, I mean, if you reviewed it as a vacant lot at that point, I don't think that this board would approve such a thing of any kind of construction beyond that 75-foot marker. So I would just suggest that perhaps you could consider keeping the hearing open until all the proper plans are in place and it's easier to understand what's happening here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure, Pam, thank you.
I mean, I'm personally
I mean,
just
I guess-
a bit uncomfortable with all this new information about the lot line.
Yeah, okay.
I would like to investigate it, or
Yeah,
you know, the answers, or somebody. we
I'd be willing to
consult,
keep it open until we hear from the town board as to what the actual
or-
rule
Yeah.
is.
And there's,
So-
and there's a
I'm not an attorney either.
revised, we know that's a revised vegetation plan we have to wait for anyway.
So, I make a motion to adjourn the public hearing for updated site plan. So the site plan's coordinated with the actual plan. Would love to see some decrease in the patio to get it out of the vegetative buffer, or even make a nod to make it a little smaller. It does seem quite large, as you've heard comments about. Love to understand about the water system for plantings, and gives people time to look at it again, so.
Fair enough.
Second, someone second that?
I'll second that.
Aye.
That took longer than I.
Public hearing.
All right, that closes the public hearings, and we move on to our work session. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have another one. Just go fast.
Yeah, I was driving home from Hawthorne.
No, I'm just like, I just want to share.
The right buttons.
Okay, so I have the public notice in front of me. I'll read it quickly. This is for,
Or F. Pecana.
notice hereby given for the following hearing will be held by the Shelter Island Planning Board on the 11th day of June, 2024, in person and at the Shelter Island Town Hall, 38 North Ferry Road, Shelter Island, New York. Applications scheduled to begin at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter. Public hearing regarding an application for a wetlands permit by Daniel K. Reish and Peter Reish. The property which is subject of the application is located at 4F Conic Avenue, Shelter Island, New York, Suffolk County Tax Map number 700-2115. The applicant is requesting a wetlands permit as is required pursuant to Town Wetlands Code 129-2 to remove an existing septic system and install new IAA OWTS within 100 feet of the tidal wetlands. Secret Class Type 2. The subject application is available for review at the Office of the Shelter Island Planning Board and on the Planning Board's website. All persons wishing to be heard should appear at the aforementioned time and place. So we do have comments from the CAC. They have three. Good project for conservation of the environment. Approval by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation on 6/11/2021. And then they have a question. Why a 3-year delay for installation? And then 3, vote for approval, 5-0 approved. Matt, do you want to?
Matthew Sherman, Sherman Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the Reese's, the property owners. This is about as straightforward of an application as I think the board is ever going to get. I did want to comment, I was kind of proud of us that the CAC really had to dig deep to find a problem with this application. 3-year delay on installation is we had to get a variance from the health department in order to get this thing approved because the site is just so tight. We don't have our separation distances of surface waters. We don't have our separation distances to supply wells. It's taken a very bad situation and making it significantly better, although not perfect. So this, I don't know how familiar, how many of you went out to the site, but it's basically surrounded by water on 2.5 sides. There is very little groundwater or fresh water in the area. Their well ended up having to be pushed as far landward as we could get it in order to have a potable supply well. Not doing any work on the house at this time. This is strictly taking out the old septic, which is, 30 some odd feet from the wetlands, 33.5 feet from the wetlands, and installing a new septic, which is the leaching field that is just over 58 feet from the wetlands. So we're within that 100-foot that we're not supposed to be, but it is a significant improvement over what's there now. And I did look at options, and I couldn't come up with any options. This is all I got. This is it.
This one is, I'm familiar with the area and the problems in the
Yeah,
area.
thank you, you are, yep.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Does anyone online have any questions? Pam?
Yes, good evening. My only question on this is that town code does not allow for septics to be within 100 feet of the wetlands. I understand that this is a very tight situation on this piece of property. It sounds like a wonderful thing to do, but it seems to me that the town code would have to be revised to make an exception to this installation of the IA system before you could actually give your advisory opinion on it and make a ruling on this wetlands application. I don't believe the planning board has the authority to do that. I would suggest that, again, maybe you take it to the town board and see how they'd like to handle situations like this. It's probably not the only house that has the same similar environmental restrictions on what they'd like to do, and perhaps it's a good time to look at that section of the town code, make the correction, and then move forward with this application.
Thank you, Pam.
I can address that. I don't know, and Pam can correct me if I'm wrong. The town code does say no in 129-2 when it asks about a new septic system on a piece of property. There is some debate about the semantics. Is a new septic system basically a vacant piece of property, or is it strictly a new system, even if it's replacing an old system? Either way, it doesn't matter. When you look at the town code, when it says no, it gives us a definition. And the definition, it says an activity not allowed, however, applications may be processed in consideration of differences between town law and DEC laws if all other remedies have been exhausted and DEC approval is obtained or a letter of non-jurisdiction is applicable. That clearly says the board has the discretion. If there's an issue, if there's a conflict between the town code and the DEC code or the DEC approvals, the planning board or the town has the discretion to approve something that would otherwise not be allowed. I don't see how there's any other way to read that. So we have a DEC approval for this system. We have a health department approval for the system, even though the health department isn't referenced in this. It's going back to the DEC, we are clearly in compliant with the DEC regulations based on their approval. So based on that, we're asking that the town board, the town planning board also follow suit. Thank you.
Anyone else online on Zoom? All right, so I'm going to make a motion to close this public hearing. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we move on to the work site. We have a numerous lot line and subdivision applications in front of us. The Bloom minor subdivision, they were supposed to get their sanitary system in.
It's halfway in, it's almost done. We're piping it up tomorrow.
And then the well,
That's not my problem.
okay. So they have a deadline of July 11th. Obviously, they're going to be asking for an extension on that one.
The next meeting.
July 9th. July 9th. We haven't written the resolution, but we did receive an extension for SH29 West Neck LLC. We did get the deed for the lift site property but we're waiting for the Suffolk Water.
I'll just give you a quick update. Yes, we had sent the deeds and all the transfer docs to the Water Authority for execution. It got lost somewhere in the Water Authority, so they've received a new set that they're gonna sign, and we should have it hopefully later this week, and then I'll submit it.
Awesome.
Okay,
But we'll have that resolution for you next month.
okay, great, thank you.
6 Daniel Lord Road LLC, 3 Borough Hall LLC, lot line adjustment. We're waiting on proof of filing. And my understanding is they've accomplished that and they're just waiting to get us some maps. And they have till July 11th on that.
Mr. Chairman, I can speak to that if you'd like.
Oh, Mr. Wagner.
How are you? Just to bring you up to date, yes, we have prepared with the planning board attorney's assistance 4 separate deeds to effectuate the lot line adjustments that the board approved back in January. Those deeds have all been finalized, executed, and they have been recorded with the Suffolk County Clerk. And in fact, the town, I'm sorry, not the town, but the Real Property Tax Service Agency of the county has already redrawn the tax maps to reflect the various adjustments that were made. The only thing left to do really is to submit for your signature the final approved map so we can record it as a miscellaneous map with the county. So we'll be doing that shortly. I would expect within the next 2 weeks, we'll have that to you.
Great, great. So you won't need the extension on July 11th.
I'm hoping I won't. That's correct.
Great,
Try to get it done for you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Elliott Bowsman lot line adjustment. We're waiting on deeds. They have till,
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
yeah.
Those properties have already been in existence as they are for, 15 years. I don't know if new deeds are required on it or not. And we submitted the existing deeds with the application, so I can submit them again.
And they've been recorded with the county.
Yeah, for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
I just- So he just needs to submit a new map for my signature or something, or?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll get you that.
Fine.
Good, thanks.
It'll be done before November 12th.
I think we'll make it.
I hope so.
R&B Shelter Island LLC, Radigan lot line adjustment. We just approved that and they'll have to start working on their deeds. We have West Neck Creek Cottage subdivision. And last month we discussed it, Joe's memo. And we discussed some mapping changes. And Matt, you came back with a email saying the homeowner doesn't want to make those mapping changes.
Yeah, actually, the lot was, we looked at a couple of different options, many different options, and they came up with that configuration in order to maximize the water frontage of both properties, utilize the footprint of the existing house and not encroach, create more of a confined, buildable envelope for either property. So by keeping the parkland to the south, I'll call it, that accomplishes those goals. They understand that there is some issues and there's work involved in doing that because of needing a separate ownership, whether it's an HOA or whatever the case may be. But when looking at the pros and cons, it seemed to be the best way for them to move forward on. I know that there's other applications, other subdivisions that have done a similar thing where as long as a property, even if it wasn't contiguous with a parkland, had access to it by going out onto the road, that it was acceptable.
So I'm the one who mentioned that. I don't recall an application where the parkland wasn't directly accessible by both properties. Now, you brought up the Clark's Capital, but they had properties that were, I remember that second lot at the end of the road. It wasn't contiguous to, but everyone could gain easily access to it. The way I'm looking at it, if you have 2 lots in a parkland here, there's no way that someone, here tries to gain control of that, especially since it's only a little flag and then the bulk of it's by the water, and not allow this person access to it. So I feel much more comfortable if it was in the middle that both people get direct access to. It doesn't really, it doesn't, if you keep the same flag and the walls of the property at the water, it doesn't really change the width of the building envelope. It just pushes the one building envelope a little bit to the whichever direction.
The other direction.
So it doesn't sacrifice the argument of making the one
What that,
building, it doesn't work.
what that ends up doing though is when you come down toward the water, because that envelope flares out in order to get the square footage you need, when you extend those property lines out as if you would, as if you were looking to build a dock, you're now significantly encroaching on the area that either of those properties could build a dock. So that's a concern there. The other thing about access, if they can still get out to the road, they can still get access to that parkland. It's not like the parkland is landlocked. So parcel number one, short of building a fence across the end of the parkland, they couldn't prohibit access to.
Well, I'm thinking of a property in Nostrand Parkway that absorbed the town landing or the parkland next to it, and now no one else in Nostrand Parkway can use that.
But also, you still have to go out in the street to go.
Yeah.
But it's a Westmoreland. I mean, yes, you have to go out on the street. You're not going out to 114 and walking down 114 to get to the parkland. You're going out to Westmoreland. So I understand the sentiment, I understand the concern. The issue about somebody absorbing a town landing may not be the most accurate litmus test for something like this. It's, you know, I understand that families don't necessarily always get along, and sometimes strangers as adjacent property owners are better than families. But, you know, there is clearly access to this. Same thing with Clark. They had to go out to Cherry, or I guess Meadow, and go over to the parkland. It was a very, very similar scenario.
So what is the precedent on this? You've been on the board longer than I have.
I believe there was a subdivision for Briggs. And that subdivision had an open space that wasn't contiguous to all the parcels, but you can gain access to it by a common driveway.
I was thinking of Stiver as the other one that I'm involved with, I know more about, where the property was, the parkland was, remained part of the actual parcels. It was just done with a covenant restriction that it couldn't be built on. So the parkland was divided, half belonged to part lot A, half belonged to the part B, but it was dealt with a covenant over both, which would seem to, instead of having a separate third lot altogether, would solve the problem in which, a little differently.
Yeah.
You just couldn't fence off those properties and you can't build on them. But two neighbors could use those two lots. If there's some way that you could be drawn so it doesn't affect the dock installation.
A situation like that, would the property line, would the easement factor in with the property line? No, it wouldn't, right? You wouldn't have a setback off an easement, would you? A conservation easement?
Yes, you'd have a separate, it'd be the same as a separate lot as
All right, so
well.
then yeah.
And this way you don't have to set up an HOA. I'm just gonna ask you to think about that.
I think we have, and we would like to keep it the way we can if that's an option.
What do you guys think? A separate lot off the one property instead of directly accessible to both, is that acceptable to you?
I'm fine with that.
Joe said that this one property, Briggs, was like that one, that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, I don't know, that's before my time. Joe, this property that you met, Briggs, you said, I'm sorry.
Right.
So that you're saying it's very similar to what they have here, and that's how they resolved it? They just went out to whatever that road was, or?
It was a common driveway.
Yeah, that counts.
But this isn't a common driveway, this is it's almost like a separate flag strip up Westmoreland Drive.
Yeah, but it acts as a driveway.
Yeah, but it's public access versus the driveway that's private. They're able to share, it's a shared driveway, Joe,
Yes.
but private.
I mean, just because it's in Westmoreland, you can't just say, well, it's Westmoreland, so therefore, it's not like a street but
I'm not saying that you should just throw caution to the wind, But I am saying when looking at it in relation to the properties themselves,
Yeah.
it has to be taken into account.
Are you sure you can't go back and, no? No. No, let's see, it's.
What's, is there anything we could do to give a better chance that they say it couldn't be submitted? I think that sounds like part of your concern.
Stop. Right, and
So that's right in the middle.
give them a comment.
I'm just saying right now, this is gonna be actually held by this property.
I think you
Not
wind up
really
supervised as a
supervised.
have this uncontrolled living in, so.
Code says such lands must be actually usable for park or recreational purposes, either by owners of the lots on the residential subdivision plat or by the public, depending on the nature of the ownership of the property. So the board would have to make that determination that something that would be actually usable by the owners of the lots.
That's 7,000 square feet, so. I thought you were thinking do two on this property.
This is shorter.
Yeah.
Just be owned by each, push this over a little bit. And then you have that property strip right down the middle. And it could be partially owned by both properties, it just be coveted, but you can't. That way it avoids the HOA and it avoids the issues that we're concerned about. And
I don't know if the HOA is, I mean, like the HOA is an HOA, it's like you just do it. So it's like, but I think the bigger issue is to make sure that this is.
Yeah,
remains perpetually accessible by both properties.
Right, so can we put a covenant that makes it perpetually?
Well, yeah, they would be.
So, I mean, to me, it seems like it's like anything in this town. It's like people do what they're gonna do, but at least you have it written so that if they do it, they get in trouble.
you have to assume that parties aren't always gonna get along, you don't ever know what's gonna happen. You have to assume the worst and plan for that.
It seems that the parties that are there. That's how.
Right now they do,
Yeah,
but,
right now, I know in the future. If you put a covenant on it, then that's what it's gonna
yeah,
be.
let's do that.
And we've heard from both parties. But you have to-
Well, the only one person owns it, they're subdividing.
Okay, so there is no second party.
Yes, not yet.
That's what I was
Not
wondering.
yet.
And I assume they're gonna keep this part and not that part?
I don't know what their intentions is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm not.
Well, it kind of does. Because if.
How so? What?
Because if their plan is to keep this and sell that off, then
It goes
I
with
would
it.
question their wanting having this on the side.
The plan at this point is there's a couple of different family members, they're each getting a
Yes.
parcel. So, you know,
But you don't understand.
what someone wants to do in 10 years, your guess is as good as
I
mine.
understand. I'm not thinking about 10 years, I'm thinking about 4 years. Right, it's like, in other words, if they design this because they're gonna give this over here and give them the substandard part and keep the thing for themselves, then I would question more and be more concerned. But if it sounds like it's family, it's like, it does not sound like it's true. It seems primarily a deed covenant that perhaps go along with both properties. I think I'd be okay with that personally. Oh,
And it'd be required, I guess it requires an HOA then, because it's a separate parcel.
I should have really, really big fees, so they keep it really nice. Write that in.
Alright, so,
Get a commission on that?
we'll set a public hearing for next month then?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And we'll see, because maybe there might be we might hear something in the public.
Actually, we have to do secret on that, right?
Yeah.
Before the public hearing. So we'll prep, secret for next month.
Okay, good, thank you.
Cool.
Or will be revealed. Okay, I'm gonna change up the schedule a little bit. We have other business here. Let's go to wetlands permit applications currently. We have, Tesoro, you've submitted a new plan.
Yeah.
You were gonna get us a grading plan and you haven't done that yet.
The grading plan, and I need to get the cantilever deck. I've asked the architect for cantilever deck information, so once I've got that, then I'll submit those.
Okay, so we're still waiting on the Tesoro.
Very disappointed.
We just heard Dune and we're, that's open. We've just closed Reach. I'm happy with, we can discuss this quickly. I think, Beth, we're gonna ask you to write a resolution for this. And the list that we usually go through. Proposed action will, and location will not create a risk of impairing the function and value of the wetlands and buffer.
No.
No, I think it's gonna improve it, removing accessible. Proposed project will not diminish any wetland in size unless the approving authority finds that the proposed activity is water dependent or requires access to the wetland as a central element of its basic function and will result in the minimum possible alteration or impairment of the wetlands.
Doing nothing to the west.
Exactly. The proposed project will not have a negative impact on the quality or quantity of groundwater. It's just going to improve.
Approve it. Good.
Proposed project will not create a net increase in the risk of runoff. And it doesn't. The application has demonstrated there are no practical alternatives which allow the project to be constructed outside the regulated area. Practical alternatives are presumed to be available unless the applicant clearly demonstrates otherwise. There aren't. The applicant has submitted information to describe alternative site locations and configurations sufficient for a determination that proposed work and location would have less adverse environmental impact. And that's not the case. The one comment, and it's too late to ask for it now, but we don't know if the well had, it's in a very sensitive water district. We don't know if the well has a 5 gallon per minute pump on it, which we've been routinely asking of applicants. The other thing I noticed, they have an existing cesspool they're gonna yank out. Is it just, well, we can't ask you, we're not allowed to ask you more questions. I was wondering if there's a way of using it to capture stormwater, roof stormwater, but then now I'm thinking the way they made those in the past, they're usually blocked, the water would be failing, and it's more of a liability than an asset. So
Can't really use it.
we can't reutilize that. So I don't really have anything else. Any other conditions you can think of going on this?
Nothing other than the 5 gallon.
It's very close.
They need the storage for that, right?
A storage tank for,
Because I believe the house is on a slab.
it is. It's possible to put it on the outside, but then that's in the freeze. Yeah, that freezes and they would have to come for wetlands for that.
Yeah.
Let it be.
All right, we're gonna skip that. We're not gonna add that.
So there's no special.
Nothing special on this one.
I think I'm overly, it's just too complicated as it is. Right.
And just quickly to address what Pam was bringing up. The definition of no, I feel comfortable. We've had this discussion many times. This is the first time we're actually acting on it. It is such a hardship. I think if we said no, then they could turn around and sue us because it's in essence a taking. We're taking their property.
I was gonna say, if you don't do this, and this technology is so wonderful, you can't put it in, then what's the alternative? You have to, the property gets condemned. I mean,
That's a
You can't
take.
build, you can't.
That's a take.
Even less concerning than not only the lawsuit side of it, because you can sue either way you go, depends on who's suing you. The more important issue is what does the code say? Because it's specifically for this instance where the DEC says yes, if you're allowed to do this. I think it's overall, the goal here is to make the wetlands better, and this does. Better, it'll be in better shape after this.
Yeah.
So if we just left it the way it was, which is what we'd be forcing them to do, it will be worse for the wetlands.
Of course.
So to me, it's like, it's
It's already been 3 years getting the permit.
Oh, more than that.
No, just since they started.
Yeah. the variance.
It's 2020.
And they obviously, in doing the variance, saw the same thing.
I believe, working on the code, like in the future, I don't think, if they're doing this, they shouldn't have to go through the wetlands process.
Okay, but that's a whole other.
That's a whole discussion.
Let's get in today, let's get in today.
Okay.
Future law, law living.
The next application is 7 Cheekwood LLC. I must recuse myself from. Chris, please
Did
take
you
over.
get everything you needed for the die?
Yes, yeah, we're all
Because nothing. Okay, cool. Before you locked off.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Okay, so this is 7 Cheekwood Avenue. We had the hearing on this last summer. It opened up for 3 months. We approved it, and there was some disagreement. An Article 78 was filed against us, and the judge took some months and decided that this is type 1 action, not a type 2 like we said it was. So we just got this in. This is from the owners, and they've gone and done the full environmental assessment form. And what I'd like to do is, in addition to having Joe look at it, I'd like to get a third-party engineer to review it.
not an engineer, an environmental consultant.
Environmental consultant, and that's where I stand with that.
Seems reasonable. I think it's getting to a level of complexity that having
Right.
expertise makes sense.
I agree.
I'm for that too.
So we would do that prior to, and then after that, we did then do potentially another open.
Yes, I believe you would,
That's the
you
order.
would request the environmental consultant to review the application prior to scheduling any public hearings.
Perfect.
Do you have anyone in mind, or?
I believe the town board has someone,
Great.
PW Grosser, that they've been using, so I
All
think
right.
it makes sense to follow up and use.
We have budget for that?
So that's the next step, is contacting him.
Right.
Do a motion.
I would make a motion to hire, to have PW Grosser review the application.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to hire PW Grosser. Do I get a second?
Second.
Approved. Let's do it. Let's give me more chance to read it too.
You asking a question?
Move the podium.
It's not a public. We're in a working session right now, aren't we? There's no, we can't.
She's asking a question, I believe, right? Just-
Yeah.
We're not making a public.
No, just that, so my question is, my understanding of the judge's decision basically nullified the entire proceeding. So I'm trying to understand how this could be a resubmission without starting the entire process over again.
I don't think they nullified it, he just said it was a type 1.
Yeah, just,
No,
they
I
just-
thought it was a type 1.
Yeah,
You might want to look at that again. Because the building permit was rescinded. So I think there's a lot more to, I think it's great that you're looking to hire a third party. That's wonderful. But I would just look into those
Take a look.
couple of things.
Yep.
Thanks.
Sorry, no, excuse me. So those are the current wetlands applications that have been ongoing. And as everyone knows, the town board has taken back the review process And we did receive one additional wetlands application, which I think is a good place to leave for the town board. We have not done any work on it. And so it makes sense to leave this one, and that's for Lopez at 64 Gardens Bay Drive.
We just need to then potentially do what we used to do.
We're going to have to write a memo on it.
Yep.
Marcus, do you want to do this one? You know, start our initial, someone want to do it with Marcus, or do you want me to do it with you, or?
Yeah, you could do it.
We haven't done one in a long time, so. All right, so you and I can take this one.
Sounds good.
Okay, so now we have two special permit applications, 5 Winthrop Road and 1 Pandian Road. They're both on hold pending the town moratorium. Now, going back to other business, and again, mixing up the schedule. When we were working on White, I realized in closing out the one of the 2 bonds, realized that we hadn't updated the bond, the performance bond in 3 years. So I asked Joe to go through to update it with today's market values. And it went from like 380 off the top of my head to now 450. There has been a significant change in the construction market. So, but this is just, you use just a standard rate document and develop this, and there's no real change in scope. It's just new figures.
Right.
Okay.
Basically from, it's a portion of the road from the end of the parking area that was created to the end of the shortened road, because that road was reduced in size. The cul-de-sac was eliminated because lots were purchased.
And it includes 2 water cisterns as required by the fire commissioners, which were also part of this bond. So I will forward this, unless anyone has any questions, I will forward this to the town board. And no. The way we typically did it was we sent it to the town board and then in the past, and then they voted on whether to request the additional amount. Then the other thing I wanted to talk with you guys about is how to track these. We had updated it 3 years ago, but I couldn't find any record that the Whites actually updated their performance bond or even still maintain it. So, and this is something the planning board has had to do with them every few years because it's not automated. And we're, you know, once you guys adopt this, the application's way out of our hands. So there's, as far as I don't think the town has any system set up to track these because they're so unique. I don't know if it's a responsibility of the planning board to check and put an automated calendar alert every year and then go track down the thing, or is it something that can be done at the town clerk's office?
But we'll have to look at it. I think I don't know. I can find out though.
We'll look into it. We'll do that system.
Yeah.
Are they almost complete with the project?
Isn't the rest of the road not triggered until they pull permits?
They have to
for-
pull building permits. They currently own still they have 4 lots, 1 on South Monantic and 2 on Artist Lane. And if any work were to be done on any of those lots, this is triggered.
So it could be 30 years.
Okay.
So then this has to be routinely updated. And every year you have to get acknowledgement from their bank that the bond is in place. I don't know how we can develop a system that it doesn't fall through the cracks. The bank would automatically update it.
You have all this paperwork on this?
So we had a subdivision off of North Monantic that the town eventually bought from Ned. And that bank had an auto renewal on it. But that would be at the current rate, and then once this new rate's adopted, it would require the bank to get involved again. So I'll send this to you, and, you know, planning board will help as possible if we can put an automated reminder in every year, but it is something it may have felt.
Just thinking of one that I've been dealing with in Southampton that just came up, and I think it was from 2011, and it's just coming up about finalizing it now, and there's been nothing from the town from 2011 to now, so I think.
So they haven't even been maintaining the bond.
I don't know how, necessarily if other jurisdictions have the system, I don't know. If
I mean, I've been-
they have someone checking, or.
I've been asking Joe to update it every 3 or 4 years. We've been
I think the code
maintaining.
says 2 to 3.
Yeah.
Every 2 to 3, it should be reviewed.
Okay. So I'll email this to you guys. We have 2 more things. One is the site plan review update. I sent the code around to everyone. This was a code developed by the planning board and EHA in 2016, adopted by the town board, and then pulled back a couple years later from the town board. What is being proposed now is the identical code being re-adopted and being put in our review, being put into our laps. I don't know if you've had a chance to read through it. It was what is good as opposed to what is currently on the books is that it has trigger points for various, say 10% or 500 square feet of lot coverage, but then it goes through a review process. It had an administrative review, which would be just done in-house by our board, or it had a full review, again, if it exceeded these thresholds. This would be all for commercial properties. There was a comment under public utilities, section 109.2.11. Does plan for water supply and sewage disposals are adequate, something we'd have to make sure. And there was a discussion about how to force them into putting in IA systems. I guess that will all depend on the water needs, sanitary needs, and then monitoring how much water they actually use. And so I don't know where the town board, you guys haven't taken this up yet. There's a section 109.2B, which notes in certain circumstances, there may be a business that wants to increase, and they have to increase their parking lot. And the neighboring parking lot is right there. And maybe the planning board has the ability to bring the other property into the review process, considering safety, egress, walking around parking lots. And then if that second parcel gets brought in and required as part of the process to make changes, who would pay for that change? That was something Ben had asked. I think that would be for the initial applicant, wouldn't be.
Well, I think it would be, the other property would have to have their own application. It would be something that maybe the town has 2 properties and they're both seeking something, and then they're like, well,
But what if only one's seeking something?
force somebody to.
Well, so Kevin had written into this, nothing herein shall preclude the planning board from requesting neighboring properties to participate in the construction of joint or shared improvements such as parking, access, or drainage.
Request,
Yeah, okay.
not
require.
require. And
I could say.
yeah, I know Tony had said they had an example of this in the village of West Hampton Beach, where there was a property that had site plan that was an ongoing site plan neighboring property had submitted a site plan, and the planning board said, hey, can you guys get together? It actually will benefit you in the end because you'll be saving. And they ended up working out something together, and they were able to get a common access, and it worked. But you couldn't, if that other property owner wasn't in for site plan at the time, you couldn't have forced them to.
Understood. Okay, so I misinterpreted.
It just allows for it.
Yeah. And the one other question that Ben had asked was, section 109-4, and I guess there's a section of this in both, the administrative and full. Amendments or modifications to previously approved site plans or legally existing structures so long as the lot coverage is not increased or decreased by more than 10% or 500 square feet. Why would decreasing trigger?
Tony said he didn't know. So that might be something that you want to update, but.
So that's probably going to be.
It's just-
It predates me, so I can't.
Could it be because they want you to go through a more extensive, so there's administrative and then it's basically.
Yeah, but if you're decreasing, why would they force you through the level of demolition being more?
That's all I can think is that they wanted to do a more full consideration because you're changing the footprint more so, which means that it may have a broader effect on other aspects of
Of the
site.
overall site,
site plan.
right,
So they want to make sure you can't just do an administrative, reduce down to, nothing. And
right.
get away with,
Well, then maybe it's something that would trigger, you could then, if you're reducing, you could maybe then improve your sanitary. Or maybe you didn't have the space before, but now if you're reducing it, you could, and so it's something that the board would want.
yeah, they want you not to just do the administrative, they want you to do the more thorough.
But
I could see some logic in that.
something that could be looked at again to see if it.
So otherwise, I think at least the committee that was looking at this was okay with the text as it was previously written with that one minor change. So I don't know if you guys have any comments. If you do over the next week or so, would you please get them to me and I'll combine them. All right, so the last item on our list is the Wetlands Code Rewrite Committee. And we've met 6 times already. You've all seen a copy of it. I sent it around to you. I took a first stab at the pretty extensive modifications. One of the biggest ideas was to get rid of the coastal overlay district components because we realized it only affects 2 properties and a third of the code dealt with the coastal overlay. Causeway. But it says Causeway Overlay District.
You're saying
Oh,
interpret as near shore overlay.
It's almost, so give me a little.
Let's remove everything and just start. Yeah, the causeway.
So we go through, we've added,
None of those properties are buildable, right? I was wondering why you need that.
there's 2 marginally buildable properties. But there was, so anyway, so it makes sense to take some of the finer points of the requirements and put it into the overall code and get rid of all this stuff for 2 lots.
I think part of it is the causeway. A lot of our wetlands is becoming more like the causeway, so we want to actually take some of those things and make it apply more broadly to all the wetlands, not just causeway aspects of it.
We added some definitions for alterations as opposed to renovations that was requested by the building department. We added boardwalks and a separate item for walkways because we're starting to see, as we've done a couple applications now, boardwalks a little across the bluffs. Added a demolition definition. So you guys have seen through all this. The regulated activity definition, we got rid of it because it was conflicting with the chart. Then the biggest change, which I'm personally struggling with, is the getting rid of the adjacent regulated area and expanding the vegetative buffer to 100 feet. And we've been talking as a board for many, many years how the original code was based on the DEC's requirements and their most restrictive of 75 feet when they review an application. And how the adjacent regulated area, the 25 feet, was an additional area where you could build in, but you got more attention was paid to you. The new demands right now from one person on this committee was 100 feet. We were asking for scientific or some reasoning for it, and then nothing was provided other than we just want the 100-foot number. And I'm really struggling with the idea of backing something without scientific data. I would, if someone provided me, we've met 6 times and no effort was made to provide any kind of reasoning for the 100-foot dimension. So I'm struggling backing this. I like a lot of the other changes. I think a lot of them do a really good amount, but I'm really struggling with this. I like the number, 100 feet. It's a good number. It's nice and round.
Ask some questions about
Yeah.
the history. So the DEC number. So at what areas does DEC currently do jurisdiction?
So DEC has 3 considerations. One is if you're bulkheaded prior to 1977, their jurisdiction extends to the face of the bulkhead. They don't care about anything that happens beyond it.
Okay.
The next one is elevation 10. They recognize that the average storm surge is when elevation 10 seems to take care of it. And then their most restrictive is 75 feet down.
And do we have any
What's
idea
that based on?
where did they get 75 feet? Or is it entirely arbitrary like most things in God?
I can only assume that they have lots of scientific experience and came up with this number. And it's not necessarily arbitrary. It just seems to be the most restrictive scale that they use. They say, well, we can't, but to assume 100 feet without providing any additional information makes a lot more houses, existing structures, non-conforming. The idea was that you could do nothing in the 100 square feet except within the existing footprint. And that doesn't include decks. It would include a covered porch, but it wouldn't include, expansion of decks or anything. You could maintain what you have, but no further expansion.
So they couldn't even get the 100-foot exemption?
There was some back and forth on that, and that wasn't fully decided. There was some text put in for the 100-foot exemption. 100 square foot. 100 square foot
Yeah.
exemption. So the text we were looking at, the wetlands permanent exemption for new construction less than or equal to 100 square feet is a cumulative exemption of all cumulative construction totaling 100 square feet or less. That was there before. What was added and then taken out was provided further that such activity will not have an undue adverse impact on wetlands, bluffs, cliffs, dunes, or other steep slopes adjacent to the wetlands. It is in addition to any construction that includes November 2nd, 2001, the adoption of Chapter 29. So the fact that some people in the committee felt that undue adverse impact was too discretionary, that it wasn't well enough defined, and wasn't feel comfortable being included. I still think it has to state in addition to any construction that precludes November 2nd, 2001. Meg was pushing, and I'm sorry to speak for you, and if I get this wrong, please correct me. If we're going to the 100-foot setback, and that there must be a much more strong appeals process involved. That really would, with all the hardships like English Virtue, they had needs for additional construction, health needs, and we were kind of felt like we were pinned.
There's a reason why it's 75.
Yeah.
And it comes down to zoning. See, zoning came to show up around in October of 1959, and wetlands came in 2001. You see, they should have been opposite, but everything is designed with 1 acre lots, 200 by 200. If you take 100 feet away, you're left with so little to build with in the setbacks. It's like common sense. Because like I told you last week, I went back to every single case and applied the 100-foot as strict as the 75. And I said, this is cumbersome, it's impossible, the amount of misery is gonna be up here, and the amount of environmental gain is down here. There's a reason why it's 75, because it makes sense. It's the reason why the DEC has it at 75.
Well, can I ask about that? So the DEC has had it at 75 for such a long time now. Did anyone ever think to ask the DEC? There's probably some historical knowledge on there about what's based on, get those things. If you can get a hold of whatever the scientific papers are, or whatever they used to base their thing on,
I had
it's gotta be
suggested,
available.
I had suggested that to people advocating for the 100-foot setback, and no one seemed to be willing to do that.
But shouldn't that have
Joe,
always,
what do you think?
wait, can I just, shouldn't that have always been available? I mean, that's been on in here anyway, that's things, this is not new with the 75. I'm actually
No.
asking Beth, because you have worked in other townships, so other townships, they know about the 75 through
Well, I
DEC
mean,
too,
each
so.
township has its own, like East Hampton Town, which is probably the town I know most,
Yeah.
because that's where I worked most. I know as town attorney, they have a different system in that they require variances. So it's in their zoning code but it's 100 feet. So it's 100 feet from a wetland. And if you want to build within that 100 feet, you would have to go to the zoning board to get a variance.
Which is what you were saying that
Then they
I
also
was
have
advocating for.
They also have 150 foot where you would be required to get a natural resources special permit. So they have another layer as well, which is also from the zoning board. And then sanitaries have different, 200 feet, and there's other ones.
Are you
The
talking
village,
across the ocean though? I mean, that's like a different.
freshwater wetlands. And then ocean has, they have dune crest requirements and bluffs and things like that too. The village of East Hampton, I think, is 100 feet, within 100 feet of the freshwater wetlands.
Stephen Kiley brought Marty Shea of Southampton in to speak to us, and we looked at the Southampton code. If you're a bulkheaded property, you can build up to 50 feet to the bulkhead. And they will review everything within 200 feet.
And they have a permit, you go to the conservation board.
And this guy, Marty Shea, the environmentalist, is involved in every application and signs off on every application. So all this power is in one person.
In Southampton, there's no disturbance within 100 feet. Structures can be 125 feet. That's a setback for structures. So that gives you that 25-foot zone where you can excavate for a foundation and do
I
those
asked,
things.
I asked Marty Shea, what that was based on. And I said, can you point me to the literature? Can you point me to what it's based on? And he just basically blew me off. So again, I wasn't getting answers. What is
I think
this
that-
really
I think
based on?
It's based upon arbitrariness. It's like what people decided was good, which is the way most laws are. It's based upon the public opinion and what people want. We could say it's 2 miles. You can't build within 2 miles. It's whatever the board wants it to be. There's no, you could say, no, there's
It
rules.
has to be defensible if it went to, if you put such an extreme and then you got into a lawsuit, the town has to be able to defend their decision of why they made it 100.
But in the comprehensive plan, the goal is to have much less housing within, I think it's like, it would be possible to do. But what I'm saying is like
I think it's
between 100 and
also
75.
based off of, and not an environmental
Yep.
development here, but just from, they base the runoff, how runoff and things like that. And, in East Hampton, the planning department, they have a large planning department. And they have 3 planners assigned to, say, the zoning board, and they review every single application submitted. If it's just a simple variance for side yard setback, that review is obviously much smaller. If it's a application for a bunch of ocean variances or maybe some other types of variances, that application review process is much longer. And they have, more the environmental, they call them there, environmental analysts review the application and they review it, the history of the property, they review the environmental features of the property, and they prepare a memo that gets submitted to the board before they schedule a public hearing. I think,
I'm just thinking like the town has, or people have come up and say, listen, it's time to hire like hydrologists, biologists, geologists, all these environmental consultants for everything to make it science-based. Why, I'm just surprised that we don't have, like you're saying, there's nothing out there that you could say, listen, this is why.
I think it's
Make the case
originally,
stronger.
so most of these laws come from a comp plan, like some sort of comprehensive plan that was done for the town. I think every 10 years, they usually look at doing a comp plan. They'll recommend, based off of this comprehensive plan, these are our recommendations, goals, visions for the town. And then that's where the laws usually come from in order to meet those goals for the town.
But it's still like Dana says, it's actually just based on what.
Well, the DEC is actually says you can't build within 100 feet of the wetlands. But then they have exceptions, and that's part of they let you do, but you have to go and get some permits. But I'm looking at the New York DEC, and what it talks about is that generally it's for wetlands require the DEC to map, blah, blah, blah. Where was it? Basically, it says 100 feet. It doesn't say 75. And then,
It's always been 75 on all my applications.
for freshlands, wetlands,
You're looking at fresh water.
it's freshwater.
Most of what we do is tidal.
I just did wetlands record.
So we're after 9 o'clock. I would like to keep this discussion going.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys each to email me some comments and I'll put it together. I've been requested, I know the town board wants to take this up next week. Can I just, in the next couple of days, get me something and I will put it all together in one letter to them. And that way we can go ahead. I'm sure everyone wants to get out of here anyway. So that's all I had. Thank you all for, well, someone's got their hand up. Sean Davey?
Yeah, hey, good evening. I would just say it's listening in onto your discussions on kind of the degree of setback, 75 versus 100. It's concerning to me that no one is kind of thinking about, well, how unique are we compared to the other places that we're comparing with? We know that we are very unique with the clay aquifer and being an island and all of that. And you're saying you're 6 weeks in, but nobody has done any scientific outreach or to justify or understand why the numbers are where they are, which speaks to me of, well, gee, there's got to be some more work done kind of academically, scientifically here to ask, why wouldn't we make it 100 feet versus 75 feet instead of the opposite? And I thought the whole idea was we want to be more conservative more generally and protect our island and protect our wetlands and protect our fresh water. But I don't hear that in what anyone is saying tonight. So
Sean, you bring up an interesting idea, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yep.
The way we're looking at this is a short 1 or 2 year code, because the PEP, which is the Peconic Estuary Partnership, has been going around and trying to develop with all the towns out here a more unified code for the East End, the way it's been presented to us. So we see this as an interim code until they develop a more significant standard for the East End. But I think there's also the conflict that we come up with. If someone presented me scientific evidence or reasoning that makes sense to go to a 100-foot setback, I would stand behind it, but no one has. The one argument is that's been thrown out is the rising sea levels. Well, that affects elevation. That affects that elevation 10 that the DEC regulates. It doesn't affect the 100-foot setback or the 75-foot setback. On certain properties, it may. So maybe then there should be an analysis of what rising sea level is actually doing, as opposed to distance back from the wetlands, delineated line. But when I brought that up, that wasn't of interest. The 100-foot line was very adamant that it happened.
Am I incorrect, and don't we have 100 foot in one section and 75 in another section?
We have nothing, we cannot do anything currently within 75 feet other than the use of a 100 square foot exemption if you have not used it prior to the adoption of the code, current wetlands code. Then there's the adjacent regulated area, which requires for the most part for you to get a permit, and you're allowed to build in it. It's always been seen that way, but it allows the town to ask for additional mitigating features like putting in stormwater, collecting dry wells, and they get to control the actual vegetative buffer by making sure wire back silt fencing goes in and that proper construction management techniques are used when someone's building so close to the vegetative buffer. So the overall regulated area is the 75-foot vegetative buffer and the 25-foot adjacent regulated area current.
I'll just end with, someone felt at some point that extra 25 foot was warranted. And it sounds like rather than leaning towards conservative, even if it's only for what we believe is a few years, we're just asking more generally, if you want something more conservative, prove it to us of why it's justified, rather than any of, I'm happy, I'm going to go look now to see what I can find. But why is the onus on that one person? Why aren't you all looking at what is the most reasonable setback given the unique environment that we live in and trying to establish a conservative buffer? I thought that was where Shelter Island wanted to be more generally. And I don't hear that in any of this conversation, except let's streamline it, get it to 75 foot so it's consistent, and wait for, PEP or what have you. And I think that Island deserves better either science or thought in terms of being more conservative. And if that means more people come through a zoning or planning board process to prove hardship of why it's absolutely necessary, I think that is very worthwhile to force that process. Thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.
Ian, so we're gonna be discussing the dot code in depth next week at the town board, so,
Okay.
You kind of have like 2 weeks to get us notes, because we'll probably discuss this the week after.
That's helpful.
Hopefully, so, you have a little time to go over and think about.
The sooner you can get something to me, the easier I have to put it together, so. Okay, it is 9:10, a long meeting, so I make a motion to,
Any exec session?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I just have a quick exec session for the board to discuss litigation.
okay, so I make a motion to close the June 11th planning board meeting. Second, all in favor?
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.